Hey guys, what's up? Mimi G here. Welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a sew along for one of my new fall simplicity patterns, 9370, which is a really cute dress. So let's get started. All right guys, so if you just need a refresher course, maybe you haven't sewn in a while, there is a sewing basics video that's linked in the description box below that you can watch and then come back and sew along with me. Now, if you are a total newbie and you've never sewn before, this is not a learn to sew video. So I suggest that you go to sewitacademy.com and check out our free trial. The very first 5 courses are completely free to you, no credit card required, where we teach you the basics of what is a sewing machine, how to use it, how to sew in a straight line, and a couple other things that will at least have you equipped enough to follow along with me. All right guys, we're working on 9370. We're gonna be doing view A, which is the more fitted skirt. The construction is exactly the same, so whether you cut out the A-line version or if you cut out the more bodycon version, the way that you sew it onto the bodice is the same. The way that you insert the elastic is the same. The way you sew your side seams are going to be exactly the same. So it really just depends on what your personal preference is, but you'll be able to follow along either way. So on the back of the envelope, as usual, you will find a list of suggested fabrics, any notions that you're going to need. In this case, you're obviously going to need some coordinating thread, and you're also going to need some 1/4 inch wide elastic, and you're going to need one 9-inch invisible zipper. Now, I just have this really long zipper that I had in my stash already. And the color is slightly off on mine, but that's really not going to matter for me. But for you, obviously, you're going to want to get an invisible zipper that coordinates with your fabric. And the length of it really doesn't matter. I usually cut mine off after I sew it on anyway. Now that we've covered a fabric and notions, let's go ahead and go over the pieces you need to cut. Okay, so pattern number 5 and 6 are actually elastic guides. So you're just gonna be using these to cut your elastic. You're not cutting these out of fabric. Then you're gonna cut out pattern piece number 9. This is our collar. You're going to cut 1. Then you have pattern piece number 1. This is our bodice front. You're only cutting 1. This is our bodice back, and you're going to also cut out 1. Then we have pattern piece number 4. This is our tie end, and you're going to cut 2. You're going to cut out pattern piece number 8. This is our sleeve back. And then you're going to cut out pattern piece number 7, which is our sleeve front. You're going to cut 2 of both. If you're doing the straight skirt version, you're going to cut out pattern piece number 3. This is the skirt front and back, so you're going to cut 2. Now, if you're cutting out the other skirt, you're going to cut that pattern piece out, which will also be the skirt front and back, and you're going to also cut 2 of that one. Now that we have all of our fabric cut, we can go ahead and get started. All right, guys, we're gonna start with the front bodice piece and our front sleeve piece, okay? So remember, we have a sleeve back and a sleeve front. So we're working with the front pieces. We're gonna place them right sides facing, and we're going to pin, matching our notches. So you have a single notch for the front and a double notch for the back. And you're going to pin both sleeves. Okay, now I want you to head to your sewing machine, and you're going to stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Make sure to back stitch at the beginning and at the end. If you have a serger, go ahead and serge your seam allowance. Okay, I have gone ahead and attached the front sleeve to my front bodice, and I went ahead also and serged my seams. Now we're going to grab our sleeve back. So you're going to grab your sleeve backs, and we're going to pin them to the sleeve front, okay? So you should have some notches. You're going to go ahead and match your notches. Remember that right sides are always facing. Go ahead and pin. Okay, you're also going to pin the other sleeve back to the sleeve front the same way. Once you have both of your sleeves pinned together, you can go ahead and, using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, Starting at the bottom of the sleeve, work your way up, and then again on the other side, starting at the bottom of the sleeve and working your way up, stitch it in 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, so now that we have our back sleeves sewn onto our front sleeve, we're gonna go ahead and start working on our back bodice. So go ahead and grab your back bodice. Now, the reason that we're leaving one side open and we're doing this slightly different is because there is an invisible zipper that gets attached. Now, I'm just going to say this as a quick note, and you can make your decision based upon how stretchy your fabric is. So for example, this fabric I'm using is really stretchy. I can probably forego the invisible zipper and pull this on over my head if I attach my collar with my serger, because it gives you the most amount of stretch. So for example, on the pattern envelope, the blue dress, and even actually the magenta, they were both from a really stretchy rib knit, and I was able to pull the dresses on over my head without even opening my zipper. But we do include the invisible zipper because not all knit fabrics have the same amount of stretch, and yours may not stretch significantly enough for you to pull it on over your head, and you may need the invisible zipper. So for this sew along, I am going to do the invisible zipper, but I just wanted to give you that option. If you have a super stretchy fabric, if you're not completely new to sewing and you think you can pull it on over your head just like you would a turtleneck, then you can forego the invisible zipper. Just giving you that note. So we're gonna go ahead and follow along with the invisible zipper. So what we're gonna do is, with right sides facing each other, right? You wanna make sure that your back is right facing your front. We're gonna go ahead and pin one side, which is my left, and we're going to sew this on like we did the other ones. I'm going to pin and pin again, and we're going to go ahead and sew this. So using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, we're going to go ahead and stitch our back bodice to our back sleeve. This side we're going to leave open, which is also the reason why I have already serged it. So once we do our invisible zipper, you want a nice clean finish, just like the rest of your garment. So if you are serging, I would suggest that you serge the back bodice and the back sleeve separately like I've done here. So when we attach our zipper, you have a clean finish. Now go ahead and head to your sewing machine and stitch together the back sleeve. Okay, so we have part of an entire sleeve stitched onto our bodice, and we still have this here opening where we're gonna do our invisible zipper. So for now, we're gonna set this aside. Okay, so you're gonna go ahead and grab your collar. You're gonna go ahead and just fold it in half, wrong sides facing. And what you could do now is just serge the very ends of these, the short ends, because this is going to be attached to our dress and then to our bodice, and then we're going to add our invisible zipper, so you don't want a raw edge there, okay? So go ahead and serge the ends of the short. Don't worry about the long side. We're going to go ahead and stitch that onto our bodice. Okay, I went ahead and serged the ends, and I did press this just so it could lay flat. Now we're going to go ahead and open up the bodice. And we're just working on our neck, right? You should have 2 notches in the back neck, and you should have those same 2 notches on your band, okay? So we're gonna go ahead and pin. You should have a dot or something that you marked, whether you did it as a notch or as a small dot for your shoulder. And then I'm gonna pin the other side, just makes it a little easier. And you're going to be stretching slightly as you attach this. Make sure you're matching up all of your dots and your notches. That's why it's so important to make sure that you mark them. Okay, now you're going to head to your sewing machine. You're just going to stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Here's a quick note. Again, if you plan on not doing the invisible zipper at any point, maybe you're going to make this again, then I would suggest, and also if you have a serger, that after you stitch this down using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, that you go ahead and finish your raw edges with your serger. For me, I forego the stitching with my sewing machine altogether, and then I just sew this on using my serger. That way it gives me the most amount of stretch as I pull this over my head. Okay, we're gonna go ahead and attach our invisible zipper. I also have a clip on my YouTube of me attaching an invisible zipper. You guys should know this method by now, but I am going to show you how to do it. So one of the really cool things that I liked about this is we didn't want to add a center back zipper. And so we actually insert the invisible zipper in one of the raglan sleeves, which I thought was really clever. So what we're going to do is, like we normally do, is we're going to baste this together. So you want to make sure that you are matching up those collar seams, because that's really important. You don't want that placement to be off when you're attaching your zippers. So that's why I pinned there first. And then I'm going to go ahead and pin just above that double notch. That's where that zipper is going to stop. And we're going to go ahead and baste. So I'm going to start at the bottom where the zipper is going to stop. I'm using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. So what you're going to do is we're going to start using a normal length stitch. At the end here, we're going to stitch until we get to our pin where our zipper is going to end. You're going to back stitch and cut your thread. Then we're going to switch to a basting stitch, which is the longest stitch your machine can make, and then we're going to stitch all the way up to the top. So let's go ahead and do that at the machine. Okay, so I am using my regular presser foot right now, and we're going to stitch using a normal 2.5 length stitch, back stitching at the beginning. Okay, I'm going to back stitch here and cut my thread. Now, without lifting my presser foot, I'm going to go ahead and switch my stitch to a very long stitch, whatever that stitch is on your machine. And you're not going to back stitch it to start, you're just going to start sewing. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and press this seam open on your ironing table, and then come back and we're going to stitch our zipper down. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and open up my zipper just enough so that I can attach the very top of it, and then we'll close it. I just need my zipper pull to be completely out of the way. So I want my zipper stop to be pretty close to the top of the collar, because this part here, we're going to go ahead and tuck it behind when we finish off the very top of our collar, so we have a nice clean finish. So I'm going to go ahead and start with my zipper open, and then we're going to go ahead and close it. And we're just basting. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and close my zipper. Okay, you're just going to continue basting until you get to your pin. Okay, now you're going to start in the other direction. Remember, you're only working on your seam allowance, and you're just going to baste this down. Okay, now you're going to go ahead and remove the basting stitch that we had. Okay, and now we can go ahead and open up your zipper. I'm going to go ahead and put my zipper pull through the inside and pull it all the way out of the way. Another benefit to having a really long zipper. And now, starting at the top, we're going to go ahead and stitch this down close to your zipper teeth. You can slightly pull on your zipper teeth open to get as close as you can without getting too close or sewing through your zipper teeth. You're going to switch your machine back to a normal length stitch. Back stitch at the beginning and at the end. Okay, now you're going to turn this around and work your way from the bottom up. Okay, now you can go ahead and close your zipper. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a little bit by cutting off any loose threads. I'm also going to go ahead and cut the zipper now. I'm not afraid of it opening since it's in the seam now, so I'm not concerned with it. I can just go ahead and cut that off. Okay, so once your zipper is in place, you can go ahead and tuck this little piece onto the inside. You could stitch it directly onto the seam allowance and then tack it down by hand if you want, so you can get a really clean finish at the very top. I do that at the very end, so that's sort of the last thing that I do, but I just want to let you know you can just tuck them and then stitch them down, and that will give you a really clean finish so that you don't see it at the very top of your zipper. Okay, once our zipper is in, we're gonna go ahead and close up the side seam of only the side that has the zipper, okay? So I'm gonna go ahead and pin. I'm gonna match my notches. I'm gonna match my underarm seam. And then go ahead and pin your sleeve. Okay, now using a straight stitch, head to your sewing machine. You're gonna stitch starting at the bottom. You're gonna work your way up through your underarm seam and then down your sleeve. You're using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. You're only sewing the side seam and sleeve on this side, okay? The side that has your zipper. Okay, I went ahead and stitched, and then I serged my seam allowance. And I also went ahead and serged along the entire bottom of my bodice. So since we're gonna create a casing, I went ahead and gave myself a stitching line just so that I can make sure that I'm turning exactly 5/8 of an inch. And you can go ahead and pin this in place so that it's easier for you as you're stitching. And what you're going to do is you're going to, from the folded edge, you're going to stitch 3/8 of an inch up. So you're going to leave an opening at the beginning and at the end because that's where we're going to insert our elastic. So your seam allowance from the folded edge up is 3/8 of an inch. Okay, once you have your casing folded at 5/8 of an inch, go ahead and stitch this down again using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from the folded edge. Okay, once you have your casing, you're gonna go ahead and insert your bodice elastic. Remember, you cut two, you cut one for the bodice, one for the skirt. And you're just gonna go ahead and sift this through. Keep an eye on the other tail end so that it doesn't go inside your casing. Okay, once you have your elastic in, you're just going to go ahead and tack this down. So go to your sewing machine, you're just going to stitch through all the layers just to make sure that you secure your elastic. Okay, now that we have one side done and we have the elastic put into our bodice, go ahead and set this aside for just a second. You're going to grab your skirt. And with right sides facing, we're going to stitch only one side seam, okay? So you're gonna stitch the side seam. So if you're looking at me, my left side is the side that we're going to stitch down. It's the side that sort of dips, okay? So if that makes it a little easier for you. You also have a notch on the very top of this. So this side is not the side that we're going to stitch. We're only doing one side seam. You have a notch there, so go ahead and pin that. Okay, once you have this pinned, I'm going to give you two instructions. Super easy. The first one is you're going to stitch your side seam using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Start at the hem and work your way up. Go ahead and serge that seam if you have a serger. Then what you're going to do is just like we did our bodice, you're going to open this up. I want you to go ahead and serge or finish off the entire top edge of your skirt. And then you're going to create your casing same way that we did for our bodice. You'll notice you have the two peaks. You're going to turn that using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you're going to stitch it just like we did our bodice using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance from the folded edge. You're going to insert your elastic the same way that we did for our bodice. All right, guys, so with right sides facing, now that we have our elastic onto our skirt, we're going to go ahead and attach bodice to skirt. So with right sides facing, go ahead and start to pin. You're going to pin starting at one side. You're going to match up your notch because you should have a little notch there. So go ahead and pin there. And you're going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, now you're going to head to your sewing machine and you're going to start at each side, okay, at the side seam. You're going to stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you're going to do the other side, same thing, stitch using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, once you have them sewn, you can go ahead and press your seams open. Go ahead and turn this to the right side. Okay, so we have one side finished, the side with the opening. Now we need to finish the other side, but before we do that, we need to go ahead and pin our ties. So the pattern just has you turn under your seam allowance and top stitch, and you can totally do that. Or you can also, I like to give you guys options, you know that, cut 4, sew them together right side out so that you have no top stitching. So it really is up to you. Okay guys, so once you have finished your ties, either by turning under the allowance, like I said, or cutting 4 so that you have a finished edge on both sides, whichever you choose, you're gonna go ahead and attach the ties to the right side of the dress. So both of these are our right side, right? This is the left. We've left the entire right side of our dress open. We haven't stitched it closed yet. I wanted to point something out, however. In the instructions, the writing is correct. It says to pin the wrong side of the tie, meaning the wrong side of your tie, to the right side of the garment, right, of the dress like this, so that you're looking at both right sides. That's correct in the writing. However, the illustration is incorrect. So the reason I'm pointing this out is because I don't want you to go based on the illustration if you weren't just following me, okay? If you were going by the instruction would be correct, but if you were going by the illustration is wrong. The illustration should show it the way that you see it here, not with right sides facing each other, because when you turn this right side out, you're gonna end up with the wrong side of your tie on the right side of the garment. So we're going to ignore that. We're gonna just follow along with the instruction, the written instruction, which is to place your ties with the wrong side of the tie on the right side of the dress. At your side seam, you're gonna match your notches. Now you can either go ahead and baste this down on both sides, and then we can go ahead, fold it in half and stitch our side seam together. So go ahead and baste both sides, okay? Same way, the other side, you're gonna grab your other tie, and again, wrong side of the tie to right side of the dress, and baste them down. Okay, making sure that your ties are to the inside, we're gonna go ahead and now pin together our side seam. I like to start at the underarm seam to make sure that that's exactly where it needs to be. Then you can pin the remaining side seam. And now you can go ahead and pin your sleeve. Okay, once you have it all pinned, starting at the hem, you're gonna stitch, back stitch at the beginning, you're gonna sew all the way through up to your underarm seam and then through your sleeve. Make sure you back stitch at the beginning and at the end. All right guys, once you have your ties in place, all that is left for you to do is to try it on, make sure that you like the length, if you need to take it up a bit. And then you're going to go ahead and serge the raw edge of your sleeve hem and your skirt hem, and then stitch it using a narrow zigzag stitch, and you are all done. All right guys, I hope you enjoyed that sew along. Remember, if you're not following me already on Instagram, follow at Mimi G Style and also follow at Sew It Academy. And if you make and post your pattern, please make sure and use hashtag Mimi G Patterns. Until next time, peace.